5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Solihull Radio studios, this is the Josh Samuel Show, your Saturday afternoon obsession.
Candles burning, ruby red, sheets are falling off the bed. Run your fingers through my hair. I know what you're thinking, take me there. You hypnotize me with your touch, and I can never get enough of you. It's true. And anywhere you wanna go, my hand is only yours to hold. Oh, you know I'm so obsessed with the way that your lips kiss me like crazy. Ooh, you amaze me when you walk in the room. You got me losing it. Yeah, I'm a mess, girl, I confess, I'm so obsessed. Oh, yeah. Every time you walk away, I guess your perfume likes to stay on my pillow, on my shirt. Listen, baby, for what it's worth, I'm so obsessed with the way that your lips kiss me like crazy. Ooh, you amaze me when you walk in the room. You got me losing it. Yeah, I'm a mess, girl, I confess, I'm so obsessed. Yeah, yeah, yes. So give it to me, give it to me, give it to me now.
Good afternoon. The Premier League is already beginning to hot up, with both Manchester sides dropping points last weekend and with Watford finding themselves in the top four. And with this week's fixture list, the excitement doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. Anyway, welcome to my last live broadcast in the Solihull Radio studios for a couple of months or so. I'm off to Lyon tomorrow as I begin to write the next chapter in the already amazing autobiography of Josh Samuel. But more of that at the end of the show. Thank you for choosing Solihull Radio, and more specifically the Josh Samuel Show, for your Saturday afternoon entertainment. So sit down, strap in, turn the sound up. Here we go.
I guess all I'm really trying to say is I'm obsessed, baby.
On this week's show, I'll be reviewing match day 3 of the Premier League, as only 4 teams now remain with a 100% record, whilst West Ham are still lingering at the bottom with 3 defeats out of 3. I'll also be offering my predictions ahead of this week's action, as, for the first time this season, none of last term's top 6 face each other. After the regional roundup, where I'll be discussing the recent goings-on at Villa, Blues, Coventry, Walsall, West Brom, Wolves, and of course our very own Solihull Moors, I'll be assessing each of August's candidates for Premier League Manager of the Month, as Chelsea's Maurizio Sarri, Liverpool's Jurgen Klopp, Tottenham's Mauricio Pochettino, and Watford's Javi Gracia battle it out for the first gong of the season. Penultimately, I'll be discussing whether Luka Modric deserved to be named the UEFA Men's Player of the Year in place of Cristiano Ronaldo and Mohamed Salah. And from 4:45, it's Solihull Speaks, as I'll be reading out your thoughts about this week's biggest talking point. This week, it's the Champions League group stage draw, so let me know what you think about that, because any comments you have to make will be read out during the final quarter of an hour of the show. And we've also got the regular features of 60 Second Scoop, That's News to Me, Topical Team Sheets, which this week is the Newcastle United all-time Premier League 11, On This Day, and Winners and Sinners. And as always, there are an almost endless amount of ways you can get in touch with me to tell me your thoughts on all of this afternoon's topics. You can call me in the studio on 0121 70 40 185, or you can send me a text on 075 64 30 30 64, or you can even send me an email at studio@solihullradio.com. And of course you can tweet me at Samuels Radio, or you can use the hashtag The Josh Samuels Show or The JS Show. Right, showtime. As always, we'll be kicking off with the 60 Second Scoop.
Solihull Radio.
On Saturday, champions Man City was stunned as newly promoted Wolves held them to a 1-1 draw, while Spurs embarrassed Jose Mourinho as his Manchester United side crashed to a 3-0 home defeat in the Monday Night Football. The pick of Tuesday's Carabao Cup action was Derby County vs Hull City, as Frank Lampard's side battered the Tigers 4-0, with the Rams subsequently being drawn against Manchester United in the third round, whilst Jamie Vardy and Gary Cahill announced their retirement from international football. On Thursday, England's 4 Champions League representatives discovered their fates as the group stage draw took place, with Spurs arguably ending up in the group of death. And Sam Allardyce announced his intention to take legal action against the FA, as he continues to fight to clear his name following his controversial one-game stint in charge of England in 2016. And yesterday, England's Lionesses booked their place in next summer's World Cup in France with a 3-0 victory over Wales. And that was this week's 60 Second Scoop. Moving on now with a bit of Jamie Lawson, as we review last week's Premier League action, with one result in particular that I certainly wasn't expecting.
It was only a smile, but my heart it went wild. I wasn't expecting that. Just a delicate kiss, anyone could have missed. I wasn't expecting that. Did I misread the sign? Your hand slipped into mine. I wasn't expecting that. You spent the night in my bed. You woke up and you said, well, I wasn't expecting that. I thought love wasn't meant to last. I thought you were just passing through. If I ever get the nerve to ask, what did I get right to deserve somebody like you? I wasn't expecting that. It was only a word, it was almost misheard. I wasn't expecting that, but it came without fear. A month turned into a year. I wasn't expecting that. I thought love wasn't meant to last. Honey, I thought you were just passing through. If I ever get the nerve to ask, what did I get right to deserve somebody like you? I wasn't expecting that. Changed in the flicker of the sweetest smile. We were married in spring. You know I wouldn't change a thing without that innocent kiss. What a life I'd have missed if you'd not took a chance on a little romance when I wasn't expecting that. Time doesn't take long. 3 kids up and gone. I wasn't expecting that. When the nurses they came, said it's come back again, I wasn't expecting that. Then you closed your eyes, you took my heart by surprise. I wasn't expecting that.
Jamie Lawson there with I Wasn't Expecting That. I didn't quite mean to start today on such a sombre note, but it's the only song that I could really use to apply to this afternoon's first topic, which is, of course, last Saturday's Premier League action. So we are going to kick off with the score that I certainly wasn't expecting, nor I'm sure were most, if not all, of the footballing world, which was when Wolverhampton Wanderers managed to hold champions Manchester City to a 1-1 draw. Now, the reason this is why this is so spectacular is obviously because Wolves only came up last season. Now, I appreciate that Wolves, amongst the 3 promoted sides, are by far the strongest, both in terms of their sheer manpower and, of course, in terms of their finances. But even so, for a newly promoted side to, really take it to the reigning champions, who, as we all know, won by some margin last season, is quite some remarkable achievement, we have to admit. And, of course, in many ways, it was as though Wolves threw away 2 points, because obviously they took the lead through volley, and then Laporte managed to equalise, I believe it was about 10 minutes later, something like that. But again, I think it goes, as I keep doing every single week, back to this question of, is this Man City side very good? Of course, they're not going to win every single game of the season, but you would expect them to be beating teams like Wolves, not necessarily comfortably, but certainly beating them, getting 3 points from Molineux. That should be, when Pep Guardiola is looking at the fixture list at the beginning of the season, that's the kind of fixture that he should be ticking off as a win. Not to be complacent, but just, have to apply a bit of theory to the practice in saying that City are a better side than Wolves. But it goes back to that thing, as I said, time and time again. When Wolves, who, despite not getting the results in their first couple of games, have shown remarkable diligence, great performances, when they apply that against a team like Man City don't know what to do. And it's no coincidence, I don't believe, that Wolves did exactly the same thing to them in the League Cup last season. They held them to a goalless draw, I believe, and City only managed to beat them on penalties. Yes, they went on to win the tournament, but I think that's slightly immaterial. The point is, whatever Santo's doing at Wolves, whatever tactics he's applying, however he's got his team set up, whether it's to counter City or not, seems to be something that City cannot break through. And I'll be really interested to see what happens in the reverse fixture when City host Wolves later on in the season. Certainly a result that's shocking, and of course I say I wasn't expecting it, but in terms of the complacency and whether City really are that good a side, is it a case of the competition isn't that great? Then maybe not the most surprising result, and certainly it sets the benchmark for other teams to think, well, if they can get a point off City, so can we. And I believe that is a trend that will continue, and therefore City won't win the league. Moving on then to Arsenal against West Ham. Arsenal managing to get their first win of the season, having lost their opening two, with the Hammers, of course, then surrendering to a third defeat in 3 games. Not exactly setting that the board would have wanted when they hired Manuel Pellegrini, but there we go. And that was, of course, despite the Hammers taking the lead after 25 minutes through Marco Arnautovic, before Monreal then got a goal back, the equaliser 5 minutes later, and then an own goal from Diop on 70 minutes before Danny Welbeck sealed the 3 points 2 minutes into stoppage time. Now, once again, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is Emery's squad, it's fun, his tactics are finally starting to come through, this is showing what a real Unai Emery side can do. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. If you're playing against a team that has been battered in their other 2 games, then the chances are, if you've got a relatively, if you've got players that can walk, they're probably going to beat this team. And exactly what happened. And you have to actually look at the fact that they went 1 goal down. Yes, it might show quote-unquote character that they came from 1-0 down. But the fact is, they still went 1-0 down to essentially the league's worst team at the moment. 3 defeats after 3, as I said. Yes, they may have also lost to Liverpool. But Arsenal aren't exactly hot shots this season. They'll be lucky to get into the top 6, let alone breaking into any serious Champions League qualification. So, I still don't think there's much that Unai Emery can say. Yes, he is expected to win that game. Yes, there'd have been questions asked if he hadn't won the game. But don't get too excited is all I'm saying. Arsenal aren't going to start a 30-game unbeaten run just because they've beaten West Ham. It's not going to happen. Yes, they got the 3 points, but they really can't take too much from that game. After that was Bournemouth v Everton, possibly game of the day, excluding Wolves v Man City. Of course, we had two sending off, including Everton's talisman Richarlison, who had before that game got 3 goals in 2 matches, being sent off just before half-time. Theo Walcott then put the Toffees in front on 56 minutes, and then Smith was then sent off for the Cherry, so evening it down to 10 men each. Michael Keane putting the Toffees 2-0 up before the Cherries then recuperated and restored parity with a penalty through Josh King, and then Nathan Ake got the point 4 minutes later. So, what can we say about that game? Well, again, quite difficult really. I suppose the point favours Bournemouth more than it favours Everton. Perhaps flatters both sides a little bit, the fact that Everton went 2-0 up, but then obviously conceding 2 goals in quite a short space of time. So, yeah, probably a game that each side was expecting to draw beforehand. I would have probably picked an Everton win just because of their recent form going into that game. But, again, not too much really to say about that. Moving on again to Huddersfield and Cardiff City, goalless draw. Probably a result that both sides will be very happy with, especially Neil Warnock. I think that might be the trend of Cardiff season, goalless draws, but he won't complain if it keeps them up. Huddersfield certainly won't do any harm to their cause of staying up again, because let's face it, that's all they're realistically hoping for this season. And yeah, not much more to say about that really. Decent performances from both sides. Managed to keep a clean sheet. They can't really have too many complaints. Southampton versus Leicester. Now, Southampton, of course, not exactly going to be marching up the league anytime soon, are they? They are still, I think they're in 15th at the moment. Obviously, that's with them currently goalless in their game today. But even so, they're still hovering above that relegation zone. They're still going to be there come the end of the season. Maybe not in the relegation zone, but again, Leicester should be beating teams like Southampton. But it perhaps says a lot that it took for a Harry Maguire stoppage time winner for them to actually get the 3 points. Even though Southampton were, of course, down to 10 men for the final 13 minutes. But again, Leicester expected to win. Southampton perhaps looking for a draw. As you were, I would say. And then finally, Liverpool narrowly beating Brighton. Now, this was a match that perplexed me. Not because I didn't think Liverpool would win, because obviously anyone that predicted Liverpool not to beat Brighton would be completely out of their minds. But the fact they only won by 1 goal. And this was a Brighton side that, okay, United weren't the best when Brighton played them, but they took that United side apart. So, for Brighton to even stop Liverpool from scoring more than once, I think is massively flattering in terms of Chris Hughton and his Brighton side. Liverpool probably were unlucky in certain places in the game, but overall, I would argue that Brighton would be happier, even though they lost, even though they didn't get any points from that game. I think performance-wise, if they can do half of what they did against Liverpool, against the teams around them in the league, in the table, then they have absolutely got no chance of going down, I would imagine. But then it might be the ironic thing that they do it against the top sides and then they fall against the bottom sides. Certainly, to an extent, their story last season. We'll see how it goes. And of course, Liverpool just about beat Leicester in the early kickoff this afternoon, 2-1. The big story from that coming from that game, of course, is the howler, the absolutely atrocious howler by their new goalkeeper Alisson. And I'm sure Loris Karius is sitting there rubbing his hands with a massive grin on his face. I think no doubt that Alisson, if he keeps that up, will be out on loan come the end of the season. But that rounds up, certainly for now, this last Saturday's review of the football of the Premier League action. So coming up next, we're going to have some score updates for you.
Solihull Radio.
So there's a few games that have kicked off today in the Premier League. We're going to kick off there. Of course, I just spoke about Leicester and Liverpool. So quickly, Mane and Firmino put Liverpool 2-0 up before half-time, before Gazelle then got one back. But still, Liverpool keeping their 100% record intact. 4 wins out of 4. Can't complain really about their start to the season. And then there's been no goals so far in each of the games between Brighton and Fulham, Chelsea and Bournemouth, Palace and Southampton, Everton and Huddersfield, and West Ham and Wolves, with Man City hosting Newcastle in the evening kickoff. To the Championship, Birmingham still goalless at home to QPR. Aston Villa have gone 1-0 down already to Sheffield United. And that was through a goal thanks to Jack O'Connell, putting them in front there after 6 minutes. And West Brom have taken the lead against Stoke. The battle, as I said last week, of the relegated side. Dwight Gale continuing his decent-ish form for the Baggies. They're putting them 1-0 up after 16 minutes. Moving down into League One as Coventry and Rochdale is currently 0-0, as is Walsall and Blackpool. And finally, into the National League, Barrow and Solihull Moors still 0-0. So that sums up the action from the first 22 minutes or so of of football action this weekend. Moving on now to some messages from our sponsors.
Fed up with condensation every morning and hate that yucky mould patch in the bathroom? It's time to contact EnviroVent. They've helped tackle mould and condensation dampness in over 1 million homes, just like yours. To find out more and to book a free home survey, visit envirovent.com, because air matters.
Solihullradio.com.
Stagecoach Solihull teaches skills
in drama, singing and dance.
But these skills don't just vanish when the curtain falls.
They're skills for life, stretching imaginations and improving literacy. For a career in the arts, learning new skills, or just having fun.
So visit our website
www.stagecoach.co.uk/Solihull.
Stagecoach Solihull. Skills for the arts. Skills for life. Yeah!
The Fireplace and Stove Centre, 1204 Stratford Road, Hall Green. Specialists in wood-burning stoves, gas and electric fires with over 50 live displays in the showroom. Come in and experience your new fireplace solutions. Call 0121 777 85 85 for more details.
You're listening to Solihull Radio.
This is Solihull Radio.
Indian Dream on Dove House Parade, Solihull's premier family-run restaurant offering authentic Indian and Bangladeshi cuisine with fresh ingredients and creative chefs. They can provide bespoke dining experiences, eat in or take away.
In 1989, Nigel Martin became Britain's first ever £1 million goalkeeper as Crystal Palace prized him away from Bristol Rovers. He He'd go on to break the record again 7 years later as Leeds signed him for £2.25 million. Sticking with Leeds, Gary Kelly and Ian Hart were teammates at Eden Road from 1996 until 2004, but Kelly is also Hart's uncle, despite being only 4 years older than him. When Burton Albion, then a non-league side, drew holders Manchester United at home in the third round of the FA Cup in January 2005, Bovril, a Burton company, wanted to mark the occasion with a commemorative limited edition of their product. This they did, with labels in yellow for Burton fans and red for United supporters. Burton held the eventual runners-up to a goalless draw in the first match, but ended up losing 5-0 in the replay at Old Trafford. The first British professional player to be jailed for an incident during a match was Rangers' Duncan Ferguson. In a Scottish League match at Ibrox against Wraith Rovers in 1994, Ferguson headbutted visiting defender Jock McStay. Although not picked up by the match officials, it didn't escape the cameras, and he was charged with assault. He was found guilty, and with 3 similar convictions to his name, he was sentenced to 3 months in prison, eventually serving 44 days in Barlinnie, by which time he had become an Everton player. In January 2011, Ryan Babel became the first player to be punished for comments made on Twitter. The Liverpool striker took to the social media site to express his disdain for 2 big decisions made by referee Howard Webb in the 1-0 FA Cup defeat by Man United at Old Trafford. Webb awarded United a penalty in the second minute, from which the winning goal was scored, and half an hour later sent off Steven Gerrard. Babel criticised the ref and posted a picture of Webb wearing a United shirt. After admitting an FA charge for improper conduct, he was fined £10,000 and warned about his future conduct. And sticking with misconduct, Roy Keane has been punished twice for the same offence. He was sent off for a savage knee-high tackle on Norwegian defender Alf-Inge Haaland, which was seen as an act of revenge for a previous highly charged incident between the two when Haaland was a Leeds player, resulting in Keane missing the rest of the season. The FA handed out a 3-match ban and a £5,000 fine to Keane, but matters escalated in 2002 when Keane admitted in his autobiography that the tackle had been a deliberate attempt to injure Haaland after their clash in 1997. He later said he got his just rewards. My attitude is an eye for an eye. Keane was then charged with bringing the game into disrepute, and this time received a 5-match ban and a £150,000 fine. When League Cup winners Middlesbrough played their first ever European competition match in September 2004 against Czech side Baník Ostrava, fans must have thought that the club was getting a bit above its station, as the Riversiders printed on the matchday tickets, "It is a condition of entry that gentlemen wear a jacket, collar and tie. Jeans, tracksuits and trainers are not permitted." It was, of course, a misprint, as the wording should have been only used on tickets for the hospitality boxes, but had been included on many of the tickets on general sale. A wrong shirt also caused a problem at the 1970 FA Cup final. David Webb's extra time goal won Chelsea the FA Cup in the replay against Leeds at Old Trafford, but he made the mistake of exchanging his shirt with a Leeds player before the medal presentation. As officials believed him to be a Leeds player, he wasn't allowed to accompany his Chelsea teammates as they got their winners' medals. Fast forward now to the 1992 FA Cup final, when everybody was presented with a medal, but the wrong ones. Victors Liverpool were handed the losers' medals, while beaten Sunderland players were handed the winners' medals, with the players later changing them over afterwards. And finally, have you ever tried to alter your dating profile to make yourself seem more attractive, more interesting or more successful? Well, that's exactly what Birmingham City did on Boxing Day 2006. A century after their first match at St Andrews, Blue Nose fans who had been given a 2007 club diary as a Christmas present must have had a shock when they looked at the club honours page. In place of the Leyland Daft Cup and Auto Windscreen Shield was an impressive array of honours, which included the 1982 European Cup and Super Cup, 7 League Championships and another 7 FA Cups. Of course, a mistake had been made by the diary printers, and the honours won by local rivals Aston Villa had ended up on the Birmingham City honours page. Embarrassment and apologies all round, but just to make sure things were clear, the club announced, "We would also like to make it clear that Birmingham City Football Club has never won the European Cup." And they forgot to add, "and never will." So that's news to me. Some quick score updates for you before we head into the next part of the show. So, still no goals in the Premier League, down into the Championship. Aston Villa have gone 2-0 behind to Sheffield United, this time with Mark Duffy there for the Blades. So doubling their lead, Villa 2-0 down at Bramall Lane, and Blues and QPR still at 0-0. West Brom still leading Stoke 1-0. Into League One, and Coventry and Rochdale is still 0-0, as is Walsall and Blackpool. And finally into the National League, Barrow and Solihull Moors are still goalless. Right, now moving on to the second half of review of last week's action. No guesses for who this song is about. This is Bad Day by Daniel Powter. See you in a few.
Where is the moment we need it the most? You kick up the leaves and the magic is lost. Tell me your blue skies fade to grey, and tell me your passion's gone away, and I don't need no carrying on. You stand in the line just to hit a new low. You're faking a smile with the coffee to go. And tell me your life's been way offline. Pieces every time, and I don't need no carrying on. Cause you had a bad day, you're taking one down. You sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know, you tell me don't lie. You're working a smile and you go for a ride. You had a bad day, the camera don't lie. You're coming back down and you really don't mind. You had a bad day. They laugh at what you say, and I don't need no carrying on. You had a bad day, you're taking one down. You sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know, you tell me don't lie. You're working a smile and you go for a ride. You had a bad day, the camera don't lie. You're coming back down and you really don't mind. You had a bad day. Is lost. Cause you had a bad day, you're taking one down. You sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know, you tell me don't lie. You're working a smile and you go for a ride. You had a bad day, you see what you like, and how does it feel? One more time. You had a bad day. You had a bad day.
Can you guess who is that had a bad day yet? Or shall I wait till the song finishes? I'll wait till the song finishes. See, it didn't take long. Right, so of course, the man that had a bad day, or to quote the Rembrandts, hasn't really had much of a day, week, month, or a year, is Jose Mourinho. And I'm not going to go too much into a criticism or an analysis of Manchester United, because I seem to be doing that every week, and I don't want to turn this, as much as I would like to, I can't turn this into the Manchester United show. So I will come on to my comments about United versus Spurs in a few moments' time. But first of all, we'll start with Sunday's action. So, of course, in the Premier League, we had Watford beating Palace 2-1, and they, of course, maintained their 100% record to the season with that win. So, we had Pereira putting them in front after 53 minutes, Holebas getting a second 71 minutes, and Wilfried Zaha getting a goal back 7 minutes later. Of course, Zaha recently signing a new contract at the club. Now, I, for sure, and I don't know if any of the others that are listening today are equally sharing these sentiments, I was absolutely stunned, and I still am, by Watford's start to the season. As I said, I thought they'd get relegated. They may well still do that. Look at West Brom's start to last season. But even so, to have won 3 games out of 3, regardless of the opposition, for a team of Watford's stature, is pretty good going. And I will go on to praise Javi Gracia in a later part of today's show. But bearing in mind that Crystal Palace have, of course, got Wilfried Zaha, certainly one of the bottom half of the Premier League's most sought after players, by Chelsea, who are looking to take, they probably won't, but they're still looking to take this season's Premier League title, amongst other players. So for Watford to have beaten them, I think is huge, and I think that says to Gracia and the rest of the team, we really can have a good season this season. Why can't they do a Burnley and push for those Europa League spots? They probably won't get into the Champions League, but certainly Europa League shouldn't be too ambitious a target for this season. They have to aim, I think, beyond just surviving, especially after the great start they've had. Yes, they can't get carried away, but they should still be looking to just keep on moving forward. Do not stagnate at any moment in time. And if they do that, they will certainly be in the top half. And there's no reason why, with some decent results against middle-of-the-road teams, they can't be in that top 7 come the end of the season. Certainly within their reach. Speaking of teams that have also perhaps exceeded expectations, are Fulham, who after 3 games, well, I guess now technically 4 games in, if the score does stay as it is, they will be in 10th. But still, for a newly promoted side to find themselves in 10th is still pretty good going. And they absolutely whipped Burnley last week, going in front after just 4 minutes thanks to a goal from Seri, who was a massive signing for them. And of course, Burnley did then get a goal back. They equalised through Hendrick. Then Alexander Mitrovic got a brace in very quick succession there. 2 goals in 2 minutes, on taking up to 38 minutes. And Tarkovsky got his second goal in 2 weeks, just before half-time. And then Andrei Schürrle, another massive coup for Jokanovic and his side, sealing the win 7 minutes from time. So 4-2 win there for Fulham. Cannot, in any way whatsoever, say anything positive about Burnley. It's just been shocking. Yet now they're at the Europa League, perhaps they can focus all their attentions onto the Premier League. But I do suspect, to an extent, that they have kind of gone down the Leicester route after they won the league. Of course, Burnley isn't quite in that calibre, but it's a case of getting a bit ahead of themselves, getting a bit too excited, and maybe just prioritising things slightly wrongly. Yes, they should have wanted to do well in the Europa League, but you can't help but feel that it's completely hindered any progress that they could have made in the league if they hadn't had that competition to contend with. Currently finding themselves second bottom of the Premier League. And this is a side that was in Europe up until Thursday, having been knocked out of the final qualifying round. You have to say that the Europa League is the sole reason, because I think that they've still got a very good side. I don't think that they've made too many drastic changes to the point that the side is unrecognisable or that they need to take time to adapt to the system. I don't think it's any of that. I think that they've got a bunch of fatigued players. Joe Hart perhaps doesn't help, but then again, when has he? But I don't believe that Burnley has weaken their side so much that it would that it organically cause them to be second bottom. So for me, the factor has to be the Europa League. But you cannot take away what Fulham have achieved in that victory. It's a huge victory, not just in terms of the amount of goals they scored or the margin of victory, but in terms of what it means for Fulham going forward. Like I said in previous fixtures, it sets the benchmark for them to achieve more this season. Yes, Burnley haven't had the best start to the season, but, let's say last season, if we said that Fulham would have beaten Burnley in the league this season, we'd probably have laughed, simply because Burnley were performing so well. Of course, Fulham then still a championship side. Bringing that into this season, I think that is a massive victory for Fulham, and certainly not a victory that they were banking on recording this season. So I think 100% that Fulham have to really take this as a signal of intent going forward, and Burnley really have to pull their socks up. I don't like to say this because, of course, I'm a massive fan of Sean Dyche and the way that Fulham have kept him on board. But with the current climate that's going on in football, you would hope for his job security that they start to pick things up and at least salvage a top half finish. Because I don't think that any board in their right mind is going to tolerate Europa League to relegation zone within the space of a single season. So certainly, I think being out of the Europa League will be positive. Maybe the silver lining to their cloud of going out of the Europa League, but for sure, I think that Fulham are looking like a side that's going to be in the Premier League for a long time moving forward. It's only 3 games in, I accept that, but even so, they're making good progress, and I'm very, very positive about what they can achieve in the future. And penultimately, we have Newcastle and Chelsea. Chelsea getting their 3rd win out of 3. Not much to report about that, really. Chelsea were expected to win the game. Newcastle weren't, by virtue. So, yeah, Chelsea perhaps, the goal that they conceded was a bit daft, and they were, I don't want to say they were lucky, because I think any time a team scores a winning goal in the dying seconds of the game, it's more than luck. But by the same token, I think the balance of decisions going for or against both sides evened out. Because, yes, perhaps for Newcastle's goal, it was a foul, but then Chelsea perhaps shouldn't have had the penalty. So, again, how do you want to look at that? You can't. Chelsea fans can't complain about one and then be happy about the other. Likewise with Newcastle. So, for many reasons, really, I would have to say that perhaps the deserved result from that game. And then finally, the game that as I said, I don't wish to spend too much time talking about, not just because I haven't got much time to talk about it, but also because it hurts very deeply, was United getting absolutely humiliated at home by Tottenham Hotspur. Now, simply, we were outclassed in every position on the pitch. I don't care what Jose Mourinho says about we won on the performance. I don't give a insert angry noun here about the performance, because there is no decent performance on this earth that is going to justify a 3-0 defeat. I'm sorry, it's just nonsense. It is just utter rubbish. I don't care if we played well, because the result does not reflect how well or badly we played. Yes, we had moments in the game where we looked threatening, but as soon as Spurs scored their first goal, we did not look like we were going to be challenging for relegation, let alone a top 4, top 2, or even Premier League winning finish to this season. It was just utterly painful to watch. I don't think it's utterly fair to entirely praise Maurizio Pochettino for that victory, and I'll explain why later on in the show, and I don't want to keep saying that teams are only beating United because United aren't playing well. But that's exactly the truth. Because if that United side were performing to the best of its ability and were achieving its maximum potential, there are very few, if any, sides in the world, let alone in this country, that could put a stop to them. And what that factor is, or what those factors are that are stopping that from happening, we can only speculate whether it's CEO, manager, players, who knows. Fact is, it's not happening. And I do believe that the victory flattered Spurs immensely. Yes, they were better than us, significantly better than us, but not the point that they were good enough for a 3-0 win. I think we were bad enough for a 3-0 loss, and perhaps that's where it comes in. But certainly, I think people have been a bit harsh on Lukaku for missing that open-ish goal. It was quite a tight angle, but even so, would have been 3-1. I don't believe that would have changed the course of the game that much, because it seems that United only ever start pressing when we're behind. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure that that's going to be indicative of Spurs' season. Perhaps slightly more indicative of United's season going forward. I think top 4 finish is probably more realistic. I know it's only 3 games in, but we can only speculate on what we've got to work with. And there's nothing about that United side that is positive for me. And Spurs took advantage of a very poor side. It's as simple as that. So moving on now to my predictions for next week. Very quickly, I won't go into too much of an explanation, just because I think we're a little short of time as we've come into the halftime section of the show, and of course the 3 o'clock kickoffs. So I went for a 3-1 victory for Liverpool against Leicester. Of course, that ended up 2-1 to the Reds. I've gone for Brighton 1, Fulham 2, Chelsea 2, Bournemouth 0, Crystal Palace 2, Southampton 1, Everton 2, Huddersfield 0, West Ham United 1, Wolves 1. The evening kick-off today, Man City 2, Newcastle 1. Tomorrow's games, I've gone for Arsenal to beat Cardiff 2-0, Burnley to just lose to United 2-1, and Spurs to beat Watford 2-0. So we'll see how that gets on, of course, with the rest of today's fixtures and tomorrow's. A quick update on the half-time scores for you. So heading into the Premier League again. So there's been 3 goals actually have been scored. So first of all, Fulham have taken the lead against Brighton, with Andre Schürrle scoring after 43 minutes. Of course, we had Bettinelli saving Pascal Gross's penalty for Brighton on 25 minutes. So Brighton might feel they've been robbed of a goal there. Great save by the keeper. Fulham lead 1-0 at half-time. Chelsea and Bournemouth still goalless. Crystal Palace and Southampton still goalless. Everton and Huddersfield 1-1. So we had Billing, who put Huddersfield in front on 34 minutes, and then Dominic Calvert-Lewin equalising just 2 minutes later. So all square still in the game at Goodison Park. And finally in the Premier League, West Ham and Wolves still 0-0. Into the Championship, Birmingham and QPR are still goalless. Sheffield United looking like they're going to absolutely humiliate Aston Villa. 3-0 now at half-time to the Blades, after former United man Oliver Norwood put them 3-0 in front there with a free kick just before half-time. So 3-0 there to Sheffield United, and West Brom still leading Stoke 1-0 down into League One. We've got Coventry and Rochdale and Walsall and Blackpool still goalless. And into the National League, Solihull, Moors and Barrow still yet to score any goals as well. So we'll come back to those in about half an hour's time, so around 15 minutes into the second half. But we're coming up to 10 minutes to 4. This is the Josh Samuel Show, and it's time for On This Day. On the 1st of September 1996, David Beckham made his England debut in Glenn Hoddle's first match as England manager, as the Three Lions beat Moldova 3-0 in a World Cup qualifier in Chisinau. And on that same day 5 years later, Michael Owen scored a hat-trick as England beat Germany 5-1 in another World Cup qualifier in Munich. On the 2nd of September 1893, the Football League became a national competition, as London, and in fact the south of England, witnessed its first league match. In front of 10,000 fans at the Manor Ground in Plumstead, Woolwich Arsenal drew 2-2 in a second division match against Newcastle United. On the 3rd of September 2014, England fans showed their dismay following the Three Lions' dismal performance at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, as just 40,181 supporters turned up for a friendly against Norway at Wembley, filling less than half the stadium's capacity, and setting a new low for an England crowd at the stadium since it was rebuilt. On the 4th of September 1867, at a meeting at the Adelphi Hotel in Sheffield, members of the Wednesday Cricket Club formed a football club to keep fit during the winter, and that club would go on to be known as Sheffield Wednesday. The 5th of September 1936 saw the curious incident of Walter Ponton and the deflated football. Chesterfield beat Burnley 4-1 in a second division match at Saltergate, but it really should have been 5-1. A shot from Chesterfield's Ponton had beaten the opposition goalkeeper and was about to enter the net when it burst and felt across the line. The 6th of September 1989 saw Terry Butcher become an advert for blood donation, after the central defender suffered a deep gash on his forehead early in a World Cup qualifier against Italy. The Rangers defender had the wound stitched and bandaged up, but he continued to head the ball, which caused it to open up, leaving him seriously blooded, as shown in the iconic pictures. And on the 7th of September 2002, Scotland pulled back from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 with the mighty Faroe Islands in the Euro qualifier.
Solihull Radio.
Here's a little road to the beginning of September.
Summer has come and passed. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Like my father's come to pass, 7 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends. Here comes the rain again, falling from the stars, drenched in my pain again, becoming who we are. As my memory rests, but never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when September ends. Come and blast. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Ring out the bells again, like we did when spring began. Wake me up when September ends. Here comes the rain again, falling from the snows, drenched in my brain again, becoming who we are. As my memory rests, but never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when September ends. Summer has come and passed. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Like my father's come to pass, 20 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends.
waking up there when September ends by Green Day. So, of course, that is an introduction into September for all of you. But we are now going to move on once again. Coming out now to the regional roundup. So this is, of course, the summary of the last 7 days of all of our local teams. So, of course, the Moors, Villa, Blues, West Brom, Walsall, Coventry and Wolves. So, of course, as always, introducing this song is Round Here by Florida Georgia Line.
Them bales. I'm dog tired by the 5 o'clock hour, but I'm ready to raise some hell. And Jesse's getting ready. I'm gassing up the Chevy. I'm gonna pick her up at 6. I hope she's gonna wear them jeans with the tear that her mama never fixed. The moon comes up and the sun goes down. We find a little spot on the edge of town. Twist off, sip a little, pass it around. Dance in the dust, turn the radio up. And that fireball whiskey whispers temptation in my ear. It's a feeling alright Saturday night, and that's how we do it round here. Yeah, that's how we do it round here. Mud on the grips, wild cherry on her lips. I've been working and trying and flirting and dying for an all-night kind of kiss. And country on the boombox, and candles on the toolbox. I'm doing everything right, got the country boy charm turned all the way on tonight. Yeah, the moon comes up and the sun goes down. We find a little spot on the edge of town. Twist off, sip a little, pass it around. Dance in the dust, turn the radio up. And that fireball whiskey whispers temptation in my ear. It's a feeling alright Saturday night, and that's how we do it round here. Yeah, that's how we do it round here. Yeah, the moon comes up and the sun goes down. We find a little spot on the edge of town. Twist off, sip a little, pass it around. Dance in the dust, turn the radio up. And that fireball whiskey whispers temptation in my ear. It's a feeling alright Saturday night, and that's how we do it round here. Yeah, that's how we do it round here. Come on. Yeah, that's how we do it round here. Yeah, that's how we do it round here.
Round here there, of course, as always, by Florida Georgia Line. Now moving on, as always, to the regional roundup. So kicking off with Solihull Moors, who have gone down to 7th in the National League. After last Saturday, they lost 3-1 to Harrogate Town, and that was away from home. Liam Kitching put the home side in front after 7 minutes before Ada Youssef equalised after 11 minutes. 75 minutes into the match, George Thompson put the home side back in front, and then Callum Howe steals the points 3 minutes later, making it 3-1. However, on Monday, their fortunes were a little better, as they beat Wrexham at home 1-0, with Alex Goodger grabbing the only goal of the game. As you said, they are currently at home to Barrow. Sorry, they're away to Barrow, and that I think it's just about kicking off there the second half. Still goalless. On Tuesday, they are away again, this time to Leyton Orient. And then next Saturday, they're back at home to Hartlepool United. So the Moors currently in 7th as it stands. Aston Villa Slightly mixed week, really. Not too many positives to take from their performances, and obviously where they're getting on against Sheffield United, it looks set to continue. But we'll start with what happened on Saturday. So they drew 1-1 with Reading, and that was at home, after Ahmed El Mohammadi put them up 1-0 after 51 minutes. Sam Baldock then equalised in the 3rd minute of stoppage time with a penalty. So Villa feeling maybe hard done by there, cruelly having 2 points snatched from them. And then in midweek, they were playing in the League Cup, and they were away to Burton Albion, who've just been relegated to League One, and they lost 1-0. After Liam Boyce's only goal of the game was enough to send Burton into the 3rd round. And that was including Carl McFadden being sent off for the home side 1 minute from time. So, a draw and a loss for Villa in 2 competitions, not looking too good. Still in 3rd as it stands, or as it stood certainly before this week's games kicked off. So they're away to Sheffield United, being battered 3-0 at half-time. I think the second half has kicked off now. Now, as will be the case for many teams that I talk to you about in the next few minutes, Villa have no game next week, as it is, of course, the international break. So maybe Steve Bruce has got a chance to recuperate his men and rejuvenate them, get them ready fighting again for championship action the following week. And of course, they've got the loan window, some new additions. Tammy Abraham has been brought in from Chelsea on loan. So hopefully it'll be a positive thing for Villa going forward. Maybe not going to favour their other strikers too much, but it can't be a bad thing, can it? Moving on to Birmingham City, who find themselves at the other end of the table in 20th. So they drew 2-2 with Forest last week. That was away from home, 2-2 draw there. After Lukas Jutkiewicz put them 1-0 up on 22 minutes, Che Adams doubled the lead after 72 minutes. But then, just like Villa, they had the points cruelly snatched from them after conceding 2 goals in the final 15 minutes. Firstly from Joe Lolly, secondly from Darryl Murphy. So 1 point there taken from Nottingham Forest. And currently, as I said, hosting QPR. Second half just kicked off, still goalless. Likewise with Villa, there's no game for Blues next Saturday. So again, they should hopefully be able to recharge their batteries in time for restarting their season a couple of weeks from today, I think it will be. Coventry City also been in action. Last Saturday drew 1-1 with Gillingham. Bit of a trend of draws, isn't there? Away from home, Johnson Clark Harris putting Coventry 1-0 up before substitute Elliot List equalised 20 minutes from time. And they're currently in 16th because of that. And they're currently at home to Rochdale. And next Sunday, they are away to Oxford United. So Coventry City are in action next weekend on Sunday. Moving a bit lower in the alphabet, but higher in the league to Walsall, who are currently in 4th. So last Saturday, they beat Rochdale 2-1, and that was another away from home match. So Josh Gimley putting the Saddlers 1-0 up after 32 minutes. Zeddy Ismail doubling the lead after 77 minutes, despite Callum Camp's, I guess, consolation goal, we can call it now, 2 minutes later. And Ismail sending off for the Saddlers 4 minutes from time. The Saddlers still managed to crawl over the line with all 3 points. However, despite victory in the League Cup, they weren't so successful, as they lost to Macclesfield Town on penalties after a 3-3 draw. They were 3-2 up, so another cruel victory snatched just at the last seconds there from another local team. This time they were 3-2 up before conceding an equaliser in the 91st minute there to Tyrone Marsh. And then on loan keeper Kian O'Hara, who's on loan from United no less, saved 3 penalties in the resulting penalty shootout, which meant that Walsall crashed out at the second round. And today, I said, they are hosting Blackpool, and next Saturday they are away to Barnsley. And then penultimately we have West Bromwich Albion, who are currently in 7th in the Championship. They didn't play last weekend, but on Tuesday they were in League Cup action, having beaten Mansfield 2-1 at home. Jonathan Lecco put the home side up after 26 minutes. Neil Bishop equalised on 69 minutes, and then Carl Edwards got the winner 15 minutes from time. And they have drawn Crystal Palace at home in the 3rd round, which will be played in about 3.5 weeks' time, something like that. And today they are hosting Stoke. As far as I'm aware, it's still 1-0. I've had no updates come through yet. against Stoke, and much like Villa and Blues, no game for them next week thanks to the international break. And finally, Wolverhampton Wanderers, who sitting there in 12th in the Premier League. Pretty good going, I would say. Last Saturday, result of the weekend, I'm sure, perhaps apart from United Spurs, drawing 1-1 with Man City at home, thanks to a goal from Willy Bolly after 57 minutes, before Emerick Laporte then equalised for the champions on 69 minutes. Tuesday saw them beat Sheffield Wednesday quite comfortably in the League Cup away from home with a 2-0 victory there. Leo Bonatini and Helder Costa helping Wolves into the third round, where they'll play Leicester at Molineux. And today they are away at West Ham United, and of course you know what's coming. No game for them next weekend thanks to the international break. So that rounds up the regional roundup. See what I did there? Moving on now to topical team sheets. So every week I pick 11 players based on certain criteria. This week it is the Newcastle United all-time Premier League 11. So without any further ado, let's just kick straight off with it. So in goal I have gone for Shay Given. Quite an obvious choice really. I wasn't going to pick Shaka Hislop, was I, or Steve Harper. Legacy perhaps might have argued his case, but no, I think I had to realistically go for Shay Given there. In goal, 350 odd appearances he made in about 12 years. So yeah, as good as Newcastle's keepers have been really. I've gone for a 3-4-3 formation, unusually. So centre back 3 of Jonathan Woodgate, Philippe Albert, and Colaccini, Fabrizio Colaccini. Now Woodgate, of course, only spent a season at Newcastle, arguably his greatest season as a player. And it was so good that it resulted in him going to Real Madrid. Yes, he had the mother of all nightmare of debuts. But even so, very solid defender, very reliable, almost a finesse centre-back, kind of Rio Ferdinand-esque in his finesse. Obviously Leeds pedigree as well. Philippe Albert, easiest choice of the 3 defenders. Just class. The only word I can use to describe Philippe Albert was class. I think he spent about 4 years at St James's Park, 96 appearances and 8 goals. So, yeah, great player. And Fabrizio Colaccini, remembered, of course, for that iconic hairstyle, the mop of curls. He was... How do you describe Fabrizio Colaccini? I don't want to keep using the word reliable, but he always put in a good shift. I think that's the best way I can describe him, really. I'm trying not to rush my analysis of why I've gone for each player, but I appreciate that slightly time is against us. Moving into the midfield 3, Nobby Solano on the right of midfield. He had 2 spells at St James's Park from 98 to 2004, and then again from 2005 to 2007. And he made 240 appearances in 45 games, so decent run. Of course, not signed for his goals, but for his, I guess, assists and just general play. So probably not too many complaints from many Newcastle fans about my inclusion of him. In the centre of midfield, I've gone for Peter Beardsley and Gary Speed. Of course, Speed, traditionally a left midfielder, but certainly as he grew on, sort of got on a bit at Newcastle, he moved into the centre midfield role, as wingers tend to do. Peter Beardsley, apart from obviously one iconic man in particular, one of the most legendary players that Newcastle's ever had. So it'd be daft not to put him in the team. And likewise with Gary Speed, maybe not known as much for his time at Newcastle, but certainly his time just in the Premier League generally. He still spent 6 years at St James's Park. 213 appearances with 29 goals. And yeah, God rest his soul, finding a place in this topical team sheet. And at left midfield, Laurent Robert. Now this is perhaps the most contentious of positions, the left midfield, and I had a lot of people telling me David Ginola, and I'll speak about who people said in a minute. But yeah, I did go for Laurent Robert. I liked him. Maybe not so much what he did against United, but as a player he was good. Maybe not always reliable, but at the end of the day, when he was on his game, he was on his game, and realistically, there weren't many players better than him in that position during his time in the Premier League. So yeah, and then the front 3, Randy Cole, Alan Shearer and Les Ferdinand. I'll come to Shearer last, I think that's obvious why. Andy Cole, he was the second Golden Boot winner of the Premier League during Newcastle. I believe it was their first. Well, I think it was their first season back in the top flight. And, his goals and his record speaks for itself. I think he's in the top 5 all-time Premier League goal scorers. Yes, he played for a number of clubs afterwards. And also the fact that he then joined Manchester United shows how good a player he was for Newcastle. Les Ferdinand, again, probably known as much for his time at Newcastle as Tottenham, if not more so at Tottenham. But even so, great player, bit of a... He's a Premier League legend. I think he's also in the top 10 for all-time Premier League goal scorers. And finally, the Premier League's greatest striker, one of the Premier League's greatest ever players, certainly Newcastle's greatest ever player, the record goal scorer for Newcastle and in the Premier League, Alan Shearer. Maybe not so wise on his comments about other more contemporary Premier League strikers, as we discovered last week, but certainly throughout his whole career, he was phenomenal. He could hit them from anywhere, and he did. He could score from pretty much anywhere with any part of his body. Just an out-and-out Newcastle legend. And I would have to have him as captain of the side. He's the one player you really could not argue against having him in the team. You couldn't argue for having him in the team, rather. So as I said, we had a few comments about my picks for Newcastle. Let's go through them again quickly. So we had Shay Given in goal, a centre-back 3 of Jonathan Woodgate, Philippe Albert and Fabrizio Colaccini. Midfield 4 of Nobby Solano, Peter Beardsley, Gary Speed and Laurent Robert, and the front 3 of Andy Cole, Alan Shearer and Les Ferdinand. So, comments on that topical team sheet. We had Rich the Skip, at Rich the Skip 1, saying Gillana has to be in there. I asked him who would swap him in for, no response. And then Ralph Zahn, who is a Liverpool fan, says, I demand Faustino Asprilla be included in the squad. Upon asking him who he'd swap him in with, he admitted that the front 3 couldn't be replaced, so maybe Asprilla would have to go on the bench. So there we go. The only real contentious position, as I said, being that left midfield, David Gino's exclusion being quite a big talking point amongst some of the Newcastle fans that saw the post. Next week, I'm not sure who I'm going to go for. I'm, of course, me moving to Lyon tomorrow, I'm going to be producing a series of pre-recorded specials. So I'm planning on not having so much contemporary stuff, some, I guess, documentary style shows, so exploring different elements. So the reason why I've held off on the Chelsea topical team sheet has been because I want to talk about how money has affected Chelsea Football Club. So that'll be coming in the next few weeks. So if anyone's looking out for the Chelsea topical team sheet, it will be out, just not yet. And I'm not actually sure if anyone's got any ideas or suggestions as to who I can cover on next week's show. Of course, we had Matt's Attack, one of our regular listeners, suggesting Newcastle. Thanks very much to Matt for that suggestion. And so anyone that's got any idea of who I can cover on next week's topical team sheet, please feel free to let me know. Moving on, however, to our next topic of the afternoon, which is a song that certainly for the ladies of a certain age, I'm not going to say what age, anyone that's around kind of the 80s might like a bit of this. This is I'm Your Man by Wham, moving on to our next topic.
Baby, I'm
That was I'm Your Man by Wham. But just before we move on to why that's relevant to this week, I'm going to offer some more score updates for you. So Fulham have taken the lead against Brighton, as we said earlier, thanks to Andre Schürrle's goal before half-time. Chelsea and Bournemouth still goalless. Southampton took the lead just after half-time, thanks to Danny Ings, so he suddenly found his form after leaving Anfield. So the Saints 1-0 up there against the Eagles. Everton and Huddersfield still 1-1, and West Ham and Wolves are still goalless. Moving down back into the Championship. Blues and QPR still goalless, and I'm saving one result until the very end. West Brom and Stoke. West Brom still leading 1-0. Down into League One, and Coventry are now losing to Rochdale 1-0 thanks to a goal from Calvin Andrew on 47 minutes. And Walsall and Blackpool still goalless. Solihull Moors, well, they are still goalless with Barrow. And finally, game of the day, Sheffield United 4, Aston Villa 1. So we had Billy Sharp there, putting Sheffield United 4-0 in front before Anwar Ghazi, who's just got to go back for the Villains. But surely there's no way back now. And West Brom have taken and they've doubled their lead thanks to Dwight Gale's second of the game, assisted by Jake Livermore. So positive for some of our local sides, not positive for others. But that's why we love football, isn't it? So moving on now to why I'm Your Man is relevant to this week's show. Well, I think it was yesterday that the 4 nominees for Premier League's August Manager of the Month were revealed. And they are Javi Gracia of Watford, Jurgen Klopp of Liverpool, Maurizio Pochettino of Spurs, and Chelsea's Maurizio Sarri. So I'm going to just briefly outline, again, because I appreciate that time is of the essence, I'm going to just outline why each manager was probably nominated and then give who I think should win. So, quite simply, each manager was nominated because they're the 4 sides, they're the managers of the 4 sides that have got 100% records this season so far. Chelsea's looking slightly in doubt. Of course, Jurgen Klopp extending Liverpool's with their victory over Leicester this afternoon. We'll start with Liverpool, who played 3-1-3, of course, winning against West Ham 4-0 at home, beating Palace 2-0 at Selhurst Park, and then back at Anfield, beating Brighton 1-0. Chelsea and Maurizio Sarri, and they have also, of course, won 3 out of 3 with their 3-0 victory against Huddersfield on the opening day of the season, beating Arsenal 3-2 at home, and then beating Newcastle away from home 2-1 last week. Spurs with Maurizio Pochettino, again 100% record, beat Newcastle on the opening day 2-1, beat Fulham the following week 3-1 at home, and decimated Manchester United 3-0 at Old Trafford on Monday. And finally, Javi Gracia and Watford, beating Brighton, Burnley and Crystal Palace, all on their way to being 4th in the table. Now, the reason I've put Watford last is because I think Javi Gracia should be named Manager of the Month. Because, quite simply, each of Liverpool, Spurs and Chelsea were expected to, if not be in the top 4, then certainly be in the top 6 at this stage of the season. Watford certainly were not, and not because I didn't think that they would have a great season, but because, well, who would think Watford would be fighting for the Champions League spaces after 3 games? I certainly wouldn't have, and I'm sure many pundits out there also didn't. So I think for that alone, really, the fact that Watford, despite who they've been playing, have managed to record 3 victories out of 3 is remarkable. And yes, they weren't against top 6 opposition or top 8, because Burnley have had a slow start to the season, but even so, it's still a great achievement. And I think, as I mentioned earlier on, they have to really now use this as a springboard to launch themselves into a top half finish, because certainly from the results that they've produced so far, they are more than capable of that. And in terms of why the other 3 not just should lose out, but probably don't necessarily deserve to win it, I'll kick off with Jurgen Klopp. Now, he for sure has done what was expected of him. You know, West Ham have lost all 3 games that they've had so far. Yes, one was against Arsenal, but even so, if you're beating a team that's lost all of their games so far, probably doesn't say that much. Beating Crystal Palace, again, Crystal Palace have had a bit of a shaky start to the season, so again, I don't think they can be massively positive about that. Of course, a win's a win, but I don't think they could take too much from it. Again, a game they were expected to win. Brighton, beating Brighton, who had previously, the week before, beaten at Manchester United. Again, Brighton, yes, Liverpool did well to get the victory against a very tough Brighton opposition, but even so, was only 1-0. And they perhaps should have got one, at least one or two more, so maybe slightly disappointed about that. Tottenham, yes, okay, their victory against United was great, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it was a good win, but I'm not going to say this too many times for the rest of the show. United aren't playing well this season. Beating United is no achievement, just ask Brighton. Newcastle, now beating Newcastle I think was probably a good result, as was beating Fulham. Just from the point of view that they're the kind of games that Tottenham were losing points in last season. Of course, Fulham weren't actually in the league last season, but you get the idea that the games that they were losing stupid points in, likewise with Liverpool to a certain extent. But I think, much like with Liverpool, it's very difficult to praise somebody on achieving what they should be achieving, if that makes sense. So you would be rightly critical of Pochettino and Klopp if they hadn't won their opening 3 games. Maybe not so much Tottenham. Certainly, as far as Liverpool are concerned, though. So, again, I don't think that what they have done, apart from the fact they've won all of their games, I don't think there's been anything particular in any of those victories that, in my opinion, it would inspire Manager of the Month award. I imagine an argument in favour of Klopp would be that they also kept clean sheets in each of their opening 3 games. Perhaps. I could buy into that. Winning all 3 games and not conceding a goal. Yeah, perhaps. But even so, I think that Javi Gracia's achievement supersedes any of those 2. And of course, finally, Maurizio Sarri, finally at Chelsea. Again, 100% record. But the victory against Arsenal, probably the result didn't quite reflect the game. I don't think Arsenal were very good. I've said that for a number of weeks. Chelsea probably starting to take their time to actually play whatever Sarri ball is. I don't know what it is. To be honest, anyone that uses that term probably doesn't really know what it means in its true form. So, yeah. Chelsea also were expected to win all of their... I reckon Chelsea were expected to beat Arsenal, if I'm honest with you. So, yeah, I think they were expected to win their opening 3 games. Watford probably weren't. So, for that reason alone, I would have to give it to Watford's Javi Gracia, but I would probably begrudge Sarri getting it. I would probably begrudge Pochettino getting it. I could understand Jurgen Klopp getting it, but I would love to see Javi Gracia get it. I think he deserves it more than anyone. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Manager of the Month. Let me know what you think. Of course, as always, you can email me at studio@solihullradio.com, or you can phone in on 0121 70 40 185, or you can text on 075 64 30 30 64. I'll do my very best to read those out for you, if you send them in, of course, at the end of the show. Coming on now to another regular feature here on the Josh Samuel Show, the final regular feature of the week. This is Winners and Sinners.
Solihull Radio.
This week's winners are Luka Modric, who was named UEFA Men's Player of the Year, beating Cristiano Ronaldo and Mo Salah to the prize. Saido Berahino, who broke his 913-day scoring drought as he scored his first goal for Stoke since his arrival in January 2017. Usain Bolt, who made his long-awaited professional debut, turning out as a trialist for Australian A-League side Central Coast Mariners. Luke Shaw, who has earned his way back into the England setup after Gareth Southgate named him in the squad for the UEFA Nations League, and Liverpool, who have finally rid themselves of calamitous, or was it concussed, keeper Loris Karius. And this week's sinners include Udinese's Rolando Mandragora, who has been suspended for 1 Serie A game for blasphemy after he was caught on television cameras shouting an insult to the Virgin Mary whilst also referring to God as a dog. Thierry Henry, who still can't get a job in management after talks with Bordeaux broke down, having already failed to get the Villa gig. Cristiano Ronaldo, who decided not to turn up to the UEFA Player of the Season ceremony, allegedly because he discovered that he hadn't won. Juninho Bacuna, who marked his debut for Huddersfield with a 40-yard screamer in the 7th minute of stoppage time, sealing a 2-0 win. The only problem was, the win was for Stoke, as he put the wonder strike into his own net and helped send the Potters into the 3rd round. And finally, non-league side Litherland, who have been expelled from the FA Cup by the FA after fielding an ineligible player who believed that a £10 fine from last season had been paid by his former club.
Solihull Radio.
Coming up now is The One by Codaline.
Tell me that you want me, and I'll be yours completely, for better or for worse. I know we'll have our disagreements, be fighting for no reason. I wouldn't change it for the world. 'Cause I knew the first day that I met you, I was never gonna let you slip away. And I still remember feeling nervous, trying to find the words to get you here today. You make my heart feel like it's summer. To come, 'cause our two hearts will make it easy, joining up the pieces, together making one. You make my heart feel like it's summer, when the rain is pouring down. You make my
The One there by Codaline. Some more score updates for you. Fulham and Brighton is now 2-1 to the Cottagers. Alexander Mitrovic put the Cottagers 2-0 up after 62 minutes, and then Glenn Murray pulled the goal back for the Seagulls 5 minutes later. Chelsea have taken the lead against Bournemouth, with Pedro scoring after 72 minutes. Palace still losing to Southampton 1-0, and Everton and Huddersfield still 1-0, and it's still goalless at London Stadium, with West Ham and Wolves. The Championship, Birmingham and QPR also still yet to score. Unlike Sheffield United and Villa, still 4-1 there to Sheffield United, and West Brom still leading Stoke 2-0 into the Championship. And Coventry still losing to Rochdale 1-0, and Walsall and Blackpool still goalless. And finally, Solihull, Moors and Barrow also still yet to score in the National League. Right, so the one leading into talking about whether Luka Modric deserved to be named UEFA Men's Player of the Year. Of course, the Croatian winning the Champions League for the third year in a row with Real Madrid, and also managing to take his national side all the way to second place, probably against all odds realistically, in the World Cup. So, I want to talk about why I think he did deserve to get it, and why I think he not only deserved it, but deserved it over the other two people he was in competition with. So, Luka Modric, I believe, is one of the most unsung players of modern times, and I appreciate that he does get, he does get praise, but I think within a climate of players like Ronaldo, Messi, the brat Neymar, Mbappe, Pogba, etc., I do believe that Modric has been overlooked as one of the world's elite. I think even N'Golo Kante, I think he probably unnecessarily is put in that elite bracket. I think Modric certainly should be amongst those first players that you name when you're talking about best players in the world. The things that man does with the football are just sublime. So the shots that he pulls off are just incredible. So why do I think that he deserves it over... Well, let's start with his former Real teammate Cristiano Ronaldo. No, I appreciate, before I go into it, there is the argument that even if you aren't as good as you used to be, you can still be at the top of your game. And yes, I appreciate that. But I think with Cristiano Ronaldo, yes, he still had a remarkable season last season. And don't get me wrong, he was instrumental in Real's European success again. But I think for the first time in a decade, it must be, I don't think that the argument that Ronaldo is without question in the top two best players in the world, I don't believe that argument is still true. And the fact that Messi was nowhere near being nominated for that. Now, I don't believe that, obviously you don't have to be European because Mo Salah isn't. So the fact that Messi got nowhere near the top three, the fact that Ronaldo didn't win, suggests to me that we are perhaps moving towards a period of football whereby it's not necessarily the flair players that are getting recognition. It's often the people in the engine room, so to speak, the people that are getting the job done but aren't necessarily reaping the rewards in terms of goals all the time that are finally being recognised. I think that's massively positive for football. On the flip side of that, we of course have Mo Salah, who broke the Premier League goal scoring record for most goals scored in a 38 game season with 32 with Liverpool. Now, the reason I don't think he did win, and the reason I don't think he should have won, is thus: Liverpool didn't win a thing last season. They were fourth in the Premier League, having been third for a long time. They lost in the Champions League final. They weren't in any other cup finals. So why would Mo Salah get it? Yeah, he scored a lot of goals, but what did it really achieve for his club? I think that the big point of being a big player, and that's the reason why in the Premier League players like Matt Letizia and even Alan Shearer during his stint with Newcastle aren't as highly regarded as perhaps other players are, is because they didn't win anything with their clubs. And as long as Mo Salah doesn't win anything with Liverpool, he will not be in that same bracket, because the question will be, if you're that good, then why aren't you winning trophies? Or why don't you think you should be at a club that is winning trophies? So for that reason, I don't believe that Mo Salah will get anywhere near any kind of, continental, international accolades And also, he had an absolutely abysmal World Cup with Egypt, but the less said about that, the better, I think. Likewise with Ronaldo. Underwhelming, really, in the World Cup. I think, was it Portugal? No, was it Argentina they went out to? Or Uruguay, one of the two. I can't remember now. Such a long time ago. I tried to etch the 2018 World Cup out of my brain after the semi-final. But for the fact that he was a key component in the Champions League victory and in Croatia reaching the final, albeit losing, of the World Cup, I would have to say that Luka Modric is on his own, really, in that bracket of players. I just want to bring Karim Benzema up there. Can't even remember if he was in the World Cup squad for France. I'm sure he was, but even so. There weren't many players that, certainly in my lifetime, have achieved both winning the Champions League and being in the World Cup final in the same year. So for Modric to achieve that and be one of the standout players, albeit not recognised as much in recent times, for me, he had to win it. And I don't like the fact that Ronaldo didn't turn up to the ceremony. I remember I was watching Sky Sports News yesterday, and Guillaume Balaguer, not his biggest fan, but what he had to say about Ronaldo was quite interesting, which was that apparently Ronaldo's plane or helicopter was set to head to the ceremony, found out he wasn't going to win, turned back round again, didn't even bother going. Now, if that's the attitude of someone who, let's face it, is a serial winner, and yes, he should be disappointed for not winning, but he should be showing appreciation for one of his, albeit former, but one of his teammates, and someone that, without whom he may not have achieved as much as he did, both personally and in terms of the team. I just think it was a bit of a mean move, really. Again, a word that I'd like to use that I probably am not allowed to use. Well, no, I'm not allowed to use on air to describe that, but I just don't think that. I think to win those accolades, you want players that have got the right attitude. And yes, you don't have to have the attitude in order to be a good player, but I think if you combine everything, I think that's why N'Golo Kante is so widely adored, because he's not only a great player, but he's so innocent, he's so cute, like when he's riding that bike, and people love that. People don't. Yeah, okay, Ronaldo was arrogant, but he had the talent to back it up with. But I think he's getting to the stage of his career where he's still arrogant, but the talent is slowly starting to fade away. And the impact and the influence he has over his teammates is slowly starting to recede. And I think if he's got any chance of, or he wants any chance of getting his name on any more personal accolades in the next however long he's got left of his career, 3-4 years at the most, I would suggest that he has to seriously think about his attitude. And for that reason, albeit retrospectively, I'm glad that he didn't win. I'm a massive fan of Ronaldo's. I think he probably is the greatest of all time. But I don't think that's very fair on Luka Modric to not turn up and at least applaud your former teammate on winning. Mo Salah, well, the fact that he was up there is laughable as far as I'm concerned. The less said about that, the better. We are going to now move on to our final topic of the afternoon in just a second. So you might have noticed that I've really refrained from playing any country songs on this week's show, and that was mainly because last week I inundated you all with country songs. I think every single song I played was, so I thought I would relax it just a little bit, and before we go back into it next week, a bit of a mix. So yeah, here we are. Here's McFly with our penultimate song of the afternoon, with a song that I quite like. It's quite pertinent for any kind of trophy or competition. I probably would end up playing this before any cup final. Quite aptly named song called I Wanna Hold You.
Broken hearted
went further with I Wanna Hold You, which is of course the sentiment of every single team competing in this season's Champions League. So I'll just quickly run through the groups. The draw was of course made on Thursday. So Group A, we've got Atletico Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, Monaco and Club Brugge. Group B, Barcelona, Spurs, PSV and Inter. Group C, PSG, Napoli, Liverpool and Red Star Belgrade. Group D, Lokomotiv Moscow, Porto, Schalke, Galatasaray. Group E, Bayern Munich, Benfica, Ajax, AEK Athens. Group F, Man City, Shakhtar Donetsk, Lyon and Hoffenheim. Group G, Real Madrid, Roma, CSKA Moscow and Victoria Pilsen. And Group H, Juventus, United, Valencia and Young Boys. So, I'm branding this as a Champions League preview, essentially to try and gauge at this very early stage who I think will win. And primarily based on the fact that I predicted who would win the World Cup and who would win the Community Shield. I'm feeling lucky at the moment. So, I think we can safely eliminate Borussia Dortmund, Monaco, Club Brugge, Spurs, PSV, Inter Milan, Napoli, Liverpool, Red Star Belgrade, Lokomotiv Moscow, Porto, Schalke, Galatasaray, Benfica, Ajax, AEK Athens, Shakhtar Donetsk, Lyon, Hoffenheim, Roma, CSKA Moscow, Victoria Pilsen, Juventus, Manchester United, Valencia and Young Boys from winning. I think we can safely say that. Yes, Juventus have got Ronaldo. Don't think it's enough in my opinion. So that leaves us with Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, PSG, Real Madrid and Man City and Bayern Munich. So what's that? 6 teams there I think potentially win it. Now the reason why I think Atletico might be a bit of a rogue choice. I think that's perhaps the best way to put that. Realistically they probably won't win, but I think they'll have a good season nevertheless. They haven't got the most pressing of groups. Monaco of course losing talisman hand over fist as each season passes. Borussia Dortmund really aren't the club they used to be. Club Brugge, well, they're only making up the numbers and there's no getting around that. Barcelona, they are historically and contemporarily a great team. Spurs aren't going to be putting up much competition. They may end up getting a shot result overall, but I don't think they'll be challenging Barcelona for first place in the group. PSV, likewise, Inter Milan, may surprise a few, but probably not many. So Group C, okay, yeah, Liverpool are in Group C with PSG. I think Liverpool are going to have to make the choice of whether they want to win the Premier League or they want to win the Champions League. Now, I think they're going to opt for the former. I think that the board and certainly the manager, they've got their hearts set on the Premier League because it's been coming up to 28, 29 years since they last won it. Of course, as far as I'm concerned, the longer that goes on, the better. But as far as they're concerned, they'll be desperately trying to win that illustrious Premier League trophy. So I suspect that their Champions League form will suffer as a consequence, leaving the door open for teams like PSG to finish first in the group. Napoli, yeah, okay, they had a good season, but their manager's now gone to Chelsea. They've got a new manager. Red Star Belgrade, again, making up the numbers. So I think PSG might have an easy ride in their group. Certainly, as they get into the latter stage, I think that they'll do quite well. Of course, having Neymar and Mbappe on their roster, I think it's going to be a very good season continentally for PSG. Group D. This is. I don't want to say that I don't want to demean any of the teams in Group D, but I think there's more chance of me becoming manager of Barnet and Barnet winning the Champions League tomorrow than there is of any of Lokomotiv Moscow, Porto, Schalke and Galatasaray getting anywhere near the Champions League final, let alone winning it. So I'm not even going to bother talking about why I don't think they're gonna get anywhere. Group E, Bayern Munich, Benfica, Ajax, AEK Athens. Bayern Munich, without question, are going to win that group. I can very confidently say that. Benfica, I couldn't name a single player of that Benfica squad. Ajax, they're losing a lot of their top players as well. AEK Athens, another making up the numbers. Group F, and I think this will be the season. Now, because I don't think Man City will win the league, I therefore think they'll actually do quite well in the Champions League against the likes of Shakhtar Donetsk, Lyon and Hoffenheim. I mean, obviously, I'm going to have a soft spot for Lyon as of tomorrow, so maybe I'll try and go and see them play against Man City, but I can't see any of those teams causing City too much trouble in that group. There's no Lyon have got players like Memphis Depay, but I don't think that they'll be causing City too much trouble. I think City will be focused. I think they'll have a couple more slip-ups before the Champions League starts. So I suspect that they will therefore focus their attention, redivert their attention onto the Champions League. And of course, Guardiola has won the Premier League. He'll then want to win City's first ever European Cup. So I suspect City will do quite well in this campaign. Real Madrid, well, you'd be a moron not to suggest that Real Madrid won't at least get close, if not win the whole thing for a fourth year running, by virtue of the fact they have won it for the last 3 years. I don't think they will actually go all the way this season, but again, I think they'll get quite close, and I wouldn't rule out at least a semi-final finish for them. Roma aren't going to challenge them much. CSKA likewise, and as for Victoria Plzen, I think they should have a separate division of clubs that should not be in the Champions League. Yes, they may have won the league, but I think that it's an argument for another time. I may argue this nearer the time of the first match of the group stages as to why I think they should at least half the amount of teams in the Champions League. Going then finally into Group H, there is Juventus, Manchester United, Valencia, and Young Boys. Now, Young Boys will probably be playing like Young Boys, and they'll get absolutely slaughtered by each of those three teams. I'm going to put that out there now. United, on an off day, with half of their squad playing, could probably still beat Young Boys. That's how bad they are, and that's how bad the Swiss League is. Valencia, they're a decent side, I'll give them that. They are a decent side. Not good enough to win the Champions League, probably not good enough to get out of the group either. Juventus, of course, now have Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't think that either Juventus or United are going to win the Champions League this season, but by nature of the fact that, almost a process of elimination kind of element to this, I think they'll progress from the group. Now, I can't remember for certain if it works like the World Cup, whereby winner of Group A plays runner-up of Group B. Let's say that is the case, we would have Real Madrid playing one of Juventus and Manchester United, provided that they, of course, all qualify out of their groups. So to lose one of those teams early on in the Champions League would be quite big, and it also opens up the gap for a lesser club. And again, I don't want to demean them because they are in the Champions League, but they are lesser teams. So someone like maybe Roma or CSKA Moscow getting into the round of 16, maybe giving a challenge to whoever Real Madrid aren't facing. But looking at the grand scheme of things, from Group A to Group B, you'd have to fancy both Barcelona and Spurs to progress from the round of 16. In Group C and Group D, you'd have to fancy PSG and Liverpool to progress from the round of 16. From Group E and F, you'd have to fancy Bayern Munich and Man City. And from Group G, probably Real Madrid and Juventus. And it pains me to say that, but I don't see how we could possibly, this is United of course, how we could possibly salvage any season in the Champions League when we can't even beat Brighton. So I am not too optimistic, uncharacteristically, about that. So I would predict Real and Juventus. Now, as far as I'm aware, there is a randomised draw. So provided that Barcelona, Tottenham, PSG, Liverpool, Bayern, City, Real and Juventus made it into the quarterfinals, obviously it depends on who each team plays, but I would probably have to go for Tottenham being eliminated, Liverpool being eliminated, Man City being eliminated, and Juventus being eliminated. So that would leave Barcelona, PSG, Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Now from those four, I would probably fancy a PSG Real Madrid final. That would be something. And I would not put past PSG to go all the way. I'm going to say it. I'm going to be brave and say that PSG are going to win their first ever European Cup. Now, in previous years, yes, I've criticised them. I do rate Thomas Tuchel significantly more than I do Unai Emery. I'm not even going to go into, for the fourth week running, why I don't rate him as a manager. But they've got a manager with great tactics, a great vision. He knows exactly how to set his players up. Of course, the job that he did at Borussia Dortmund was remarkable enough to get him the job at PSG. Got a treasure chest at his disposal. I think they could be in for a seriously good season. And with Kylian Mbappe, of course, coming on the back of winning the World Cup, he is in the form of his life, and he's younger than me. I think he's only 19 still. Maybe he's just turned 20, but even so, he has got a massive future ahead of him. And if PSG can get the Champions League this season, I think it's quite frankly scary what he might go on to achieve, both personally and in terms of with the club in the next 5-10 years. So I would not rule out PSG winning. And I'm going to go out on a whim and say that PSG will win the 2018-19 Champions League. So would I make it a hat-trick? Probably not, because it's me and that's just my luck. But even so, I would like to see a new team win it, if it's not United. So, the order goes, United win it, anyone that's not English after United, and then who I predicted. So, yeah, I quite like to see PSG take it. A team that brings a new element to the Champions League winners roster. So yeah. That's my thoughts. I've had a few thoughts on Twitter from various different people. I ran a few polls for all the English fans of clubs. Sorry, fans of English clubs, rather. That makes more sense. So let's just see how happy they were with each of their teams' draws. So, first of all, Man City. Ask the same question to every club set of fans. Are you confident that your team will progress from the group stage of the Champions League? 71% saying yes. So, I can't really argue with that. Manchester United, same question. 54% saying yes. So, a majority, less a majority, but majority nonetheless. Tottenham Hotspur, 51% of fans think that they will progress from the group stage. That's quite something, isn't it? Considering they've got PSV and Inter in their group. Obviously, I think Barcelona will, organically qualify, but certainly from PSV and Inter, Tottenham, I think, are better than them. I think they should have no problems getting out of that group. But, there's a 2-point gap between people thinking they would and won't qualify. Wow, that's something. And Liverpool with over 100 votes. 81% of people, of Liverpool fans, think that they'll qualify from the group stage, naturally so. And then finally, I asked, which country will the winner of the 2018-19 UEFA Champions League come from? And 54% of people, maybe that's just a national bias, think it will come from England. 54%. I just don't see either United or Spurs winning it. So either people think that, are very confident that City and Liverpool will win it, or they're just being incredibly ambitious and biased. I'm going to go for the latter. I just don't see Liverpool winning it. City probably have more of a chance this season. And someone responded to that. So we had 33% going for Spain. So I'm assuming that just means France. Real Madrid and Barcelona. 2% going for France. I know that wasn't me. I didn't vote in this one because obviously I can't vote on my own poll. So only 2% of those 57 people thinking it will come from France. So no one's got particular confidence in my prediction of PSG, it would seem. And 11% going for other, and one person commenting simply with the Italian flag. So I'm assuming that he is predicting Juventus, because I don't think that AC or Inter Milan or Roma have any chance whatsoever, really, of taking it. So it will be certainly interesting. I think it will be a Champions League like no other. I don't want to say this because that's what's always said every single season. Oh, it's the best season ever, because it really hasn't been in the last few years. The fact that a team can be so poor domestically and so good continentally probably suggests that Real Madrid are in the middle of being a great team and an average team. But that said, I am confident that we'll be excited this season. I'm very confident of that, and I'm looking forward to this season's Champions League, because as a United fan, I've had to get used to not being too excited about it in recent years, but obviously having not been in it a couple of years before. But even so, I'm quietly confident that we'll be in for some surprises this season. So watch this space. And I would put a bet on if I had enough confidence. PSG to win it. You heard it here first. Anyway, that is all we have time for on this week's edition of the Josh Samuel Show. So, as I said, this is the last time I'll be live broadcasting in the studio for around 6-7 weeks at least. But doesn't mean that I'm going anywhere. I'm staying right here with you every Saturday 3 till 5 with a series of pre-recorded episodes that I will then send to producer Jeff, and he will very kindly play for me for my usual time slot. So of course, no scope for live score updates, probably slightly less up-to-date accurate match reviews and kind of elements to the show like that, but I'll try and keep it as contemporary as I can. Some weeks we'll have some specials, if you like, in inverted commas, some documentary type episodes. So less time specific, doesn't have to be necessarily relevant to the current day. Things like assessing Manchester United before and after Ferguson and where it went wrong at either side of his era. Financially with Chelsea, why they've done so well with Abramovich and why it's starting to peter out a little bit. Things like that. So got all that to look forward to. I can't wait to move to Leon. I'm sad to not be in the studio so much, but it's a great opportunity. I'll tell you all about how I'm getting on in the south of France as I'm there and as the weeks go past. About to hand you over to the lovely Debs Donnelly in an hour's time, leaving her capable hands. So please return to us at 6 p.m. But as for me, I'll be back same time, not necessarily the same place. For you, maybe not so much for me. So as always, Solihullradio.com is the place to find the Josh Samuel Show. If you missed any of today's show, please feel free to catch us on Podbeam or any of the other on-demand features. I think we're on iTunes and other various media that I'm not too familiar with. But anyway, until then, we've just gone 5 o'clock, which means it is 5 o'clock somewhere. See you later.
Is hot and that old clock is moving slow, and so am I. Workday passes like molasses in wintertime, but it's July. I'm getting paid by the hour and older by the minute. My boss just pushed me over the limit. I'd like to call him something, I think I'll just call it a day. Something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. This lunch break is gonna take all afternoon and half the night. Tomorrow morning I know there'll be hell to pay. Hey, but that's alright. I ain't had a day off now in over a year. My Jamaican vacation's gonna start right here. If the phone's for me, you can tell them I just sailed away. And pour me something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I could pay off my tab, pour myself in a cab and be back to work before 2. At a moment like this, I can't help but wonder, what would Jimmy Buffett do?
Funny you should ask, Alan.
I'd say, oh, there's something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care. Oh, there's something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care. You don't care. I don't care. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. What time zone am I on? What country am I in? It doesn't matter. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's always on 5 in Margaritaville, come to think of it. I heard that. You've been there, haven't you? Yes, sir. I've seen your boat there. I've been to Margaritaville a few times. All right, well, that's good. Stumbled my way back. Okay, we just want to make sure you can keep it between the navigational beacons. Between the buoys, I got it. All right, well, it's 5 o'clock. Let's go somewhere. I'm ready. Crack it up. Let's get out of here. I'm gone.